Welcome to the Common Humanity podcast, where we are here to have real human conversations. Today, my guest is Oliver. You may have come across him on social media as Oliver Speaks. He's got a fantastic story, but I'm going to let him take it away. So, Oliver, if you could tell me, who are you?
Um, I'm a 34-year-old brown skinned man who lives in California. I drove out here to pursue my dream to become a motivational speaker. But in that pursuit, I had to overcome some serious challenges. And one of those challenges was learning how to read. And so far, it's been a little bit of a wild journey. um, I can go more into detail if you want to, save some of those for questions that you go on to. But that's pretty much, my rundown of where I'm at now in my life.
Right, fantastic. So I want to know when when this because I came across you and you were, well, I don't know how relatively new you were to this journey, but um, I came across you on social media where you were asking people for book recommendations, like, hey, what should I read? And what, if you could tell me a little bit about um, what age you would say that you took on this journey of like, I need to be able to read better, and what, um, well, let's start there. Let's start there. How long have you been going on this this journey through literature?
Um, it's been a while, I would say. I would say at least almost 3 years, but the journey that everyone else sees, that I started to make this an actual kind of like an actual career. Um, that pretty much started about a year and a half ago. I was 33. It took off around October of 2022. That's when it took off. But I was doing it for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, when I decided to come to California. That's when it started. When I decided to come to California, is when I started saying, while I'm in California, and I made a decision to come change my life and try to be a better motivational speaker, I had to better my skills that I had. I had to up my skills, and one of those skills that I know was lagging was reading. So I jumped right into reading to be the skill to take on when I came to California.
And when you, so what were some of the books that people recommended to you to jump into?
There was a bunch of them. There was everything from The Given Tree to The Diary of Anne Frank, The Outsiders. Um, there were so many different books that, like, truth, I didn't even know these books. So even like right now, I read those, so I know them now. But at that time, I had no idea what they were talking about. I didn't even know what those books were. I mean, I've heard of those names and songs and movies,
Hmm.
but I knew what they were actually books or anything like that.
And do you have a favorite that you've read? So what?
My favorite, you know what? My favorite is it's my favorite, and it's my quote book. So I always tell people my quote book is my favorite book because that's the first book I kind of was ever given. I probably was given books in different times in my life. Like people would like if I ran into someone, they probably would like, "Hey, you should read this book," you know. But at that
Hmm.
time, I was like, "Why are you telling me this?" Like, I don't even know what this is. Like, but the first book I was given, like as a gift, was from my lady, and it was a quote book, and she was like, the reason why I say this is because that was the first book that was given to me from someone who heard me. She knew what I was interested in, so she found something that I'm interested in and gave me that book for Christmas. And that was it. It was over from there. It was like everything opened up for me from that moment on.
That that just makes my heart happy.
Yeah,
Um,
me too.
so one of this book, The Outsiders, has always been one of my favorites. Um, it, but I don't. I wanted to know. Do you know the story of the author? Anything about the author?
Oh,
Okay,
I don't.
so, so I'm gonna give you a little bit of knowledge, and this is one of the reasons. I mean, it's a great book anyway, but one of the things I love about it is her story, and it's a very short story. Um, so she wrote Outsiders when she was 16. She wrote it right after she failed creative writing class her junior year of high school. And by the time she graduated high school when she was 18, her book had been purchased and published. And it makes me happy because I'm a big stick it to the man kind of person. Um, and her high school English teacher got really mad because every interview she's ever in, she's like, "Hey, just so you know, I got failed in creative writing, and so I published a book instead." And
That's
it just makes me happy.
that just motivated me to just, yeah, I got to keep this up because I have those positions, I have those same things that have happened to me, and many different, times in my life, and where I'm at now, let's just say the teacher who abused me in elementary school can probably see me on TV right now. It's like, oh my gosh, this is going to come back to me. And you know what? I hope it does. I hope somebody does pull him up one day because I know, he see me on all types of platforms. So he might have been sitting in his living room, was like, oh my gosh, like that's the kid I used to abuse. That's the kid I used to
Yeah.
beat.
Yeah, I wanted to share that with you just because, well, because I like the story, but also um, because I felt like you probably could relate to that a little bit, and might give you a little bit more connection to that book. Um, but yeah, so going into that, if you're willing to share, what I'm, I shouldn't say I'm big on trauma. I've experienced a lot of trauma. I have dealt with the healing of that. I've written a poetry book about my journey through trauma and healing. And I always like to hear people's stories around that because I am a firm believer that pretty much all of us have some level of trauma. And hearing other people's stories, I know has helped me to overcome some of my things. So if you're willing to share what that experience was like for you, I would love to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem. I'm very open with, things like that. I love it because if it can help somebody else, then I'm all for it. Yeah, I absolutely love talking about, what can help my problems that can probably help other people's problems.
So, what age were you? So you mentioned the teacher who abused you. So what age were you when that happened, and what like how did that affect you throughout your life?
You know what? I never really knew what age I was. I was a very independent kind of kid when it came to being outside of my household. So I thought I was really old. I'm not gonna lie to you. When I was in elementary school. It had to be between anywhere between second and fourth grade, fourth to fifth grade. So it was around there. I don't know the age I would have been because I'll be honest, like I said, I mean, from since a child, I thought I was 30 years old. I never knew I was a kid. So like looking at it now, I'm like, oh wow, I was a kid. That's why he was able to do what he did. Now I'm an adult, and I'm like, oh, now it makes sense. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but at that time, I'm thinking it's just two adults going at it. But now I'm realizing it was like an 8, 7, 8, 9, 10 year old going at it with a 40-year old or something. Or at that time, or 30-year old. Um, it, a little bit about of that life. Uh, it was I would say it was everyday torture. I would say you don't know it as a kid because a kid you forget. You
Hmm.
forget immediately. You forget you kind of forget because you're easily to let it go as a child. If someone smacked you today, you probably hold on to that for a long time as an adult. But as a kid, you kind of could just go through the day and like, okay, that was last year. You don't even know. Your times are different. You go
Hmm.
play. I got out of school. My problems got left at school. I just, I went to play. I went to do whatever I had to do. But as I look at it now, my memory of that time was just restraints, and restraints is that's an easy way of letting that person down. When I look at it now, I know what a restraint is. I'm a fully grown man. If I restrain somebody, the worst I would probably do is just stand in front of them. Maybe barricade them. Put so they can't get away from me. What they did to me, man, like this man used to pick me up out of my chair midair from my neck behind my head, things like that. This kid the man used to dangle me from the wall, one arm on the neck with my feet dangling from the ground while I'm screaming at him. He would have me off the wall with my arms behind my back like this, twisted behind me. He would throw us on the floor. And not only that, while he was doing that, the worst part I think about it was the fact that he was able to verbally abuse us. So while we're in those restraints, he would like say things like, "You got enough? You had enough? You're gonna sit down now? You're gonna be quiet? You're gonna shut your mouth?" And like things like that, they're in my head, like they never go away. Like that voice, it just stays there 24/7. So even now, as I sit here and tell you this story, I can hear him saying this in my ear, hear his breathing. He used to
Hmm.
breathe with his nose. I remember it bothered me because he would breathe like that. So it was something you remember. You're like, why are you? For one, I'm hurting, but why are you breathing in my neck like that? Like I would think that. I'm like, stop breathing like that. And those are the things that I think scarred me. Like those are the things. If anybody's ever been through trauma, you would understand this. It's such a fast moment, but when you remember it, you remember things that people would never remember. You remember their cologne, the way they smelled, the way their hands felt when they grabbed you, the way their face turned red. Like that's what I remember. Those anger, the visual coming off of this man uh to a child, you know. But at that time I thought we were two grown-ups going at it. That's the thing that I missed. I didn't understand that until true TikTok. Till TikTok said, "Hey, you were abused when you were a kid." I'm like, "No, I wasn't. We were just going at it. Me and that dude were just fighting." It's like, "Oliver, you were 8." And I'm like, "Oh, you're right." I'm like, "Oh, that's why he won." You're like, "Yeah, he won
Yeah.
because you're a kid." Oh, I'm thinking he won because it was a fair fight and me and him had to, we had to square our differences. And you're like, "No, you should have never been put in that position." And yeah, that's pretty much where I've got to with this story. The more and more I talk to people, the more and more opens up, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah. As far as I've even opened up even more, I haven't even told people this side of the story.
I think it's um, very telling in especially child abuse because I mean, as a child, your brain is developing. So you mentioned it in this idea that like you didn't realize that you were a kid versus an adult and like that difference in time and how you didn't hold on to a lot of that because it just seemed like it was like your day to day. But part of that is also when your brain is developing and that's how you're treated every day, that's what your brain thinks of as normal. And so then you start talking about it in your adulthood, and there's memes on the internet where you're like, oh, yeah, I'm telling this funny story. And then people are like, are you okay? Because when you talk about your own experiences, that you're just like, this is just life, this is just how this is. And other people are the ones who are usually pointing out, like, that's not supposed to happen, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, no, because that's what I know. And um, it's, I mean, on the one hand, it's very sad for anyone who has experienced abuse, especially in childhood, because there's a lot of unlearning that needs to happen for you to, find that security in your adulthood and all of that. Um, but on the other hand, you have a much different view of the world. And I've always um, I have this theory that the people who have seen the darkest places are the people who are the brightest out in the world. Because we generally appreciate more. We appreciate the little things because we know that all of those things matter. And the people who have never had to experience like trauma, pain, like severe darkness, depression, things like that, they just don't see as much of the beauty of the world because they've never had to search for it. So
Yeah.
that's my theory.
That's amazing. It's an amazing theory. I mean, anybody who's anybody and everybody will understand this at some point in their life. That's one thing I will say. You may not experience it in your young days, but you may experience it in your older days. Regardless of what you go through, you will learn. You're gonna learn. You're gonna lose loved ones. you're going to go through some struggles. You're going to see some ups and downs. People are not going to always be good to you, and people aren't always going to be bad to you. But through your lifetime, you will learn what you just said. Some people just they get an opportunity to live a little bit more joyful. Maybe longer than you or I. I got
Right.
I learned today at 8, 9, 10, 7 years old. Some people gonna learn at 70. And that's just the way it goes. But you're right. In some sense of the way, it's a gift and it's a curse. Because I know how to, like you said, enjoy life by choosing, because I understood that my life uh, wasn't chosen for me at that time. It was given to me. That's just the life I was given. And, you know, luckily, I was strong enough to understand that, hey, go when you're done being abused, go have a good time. For some reason, I just said, let's play basketball or let's go have fun. So it allowed me now to have that as a tool to work with that in my adulthood. When things aren't looking so good, it's, you know what? Let's go look at the sunrise. You're like, what? You're like, well, you just lost your job. I'm like, well, the sun's coming up. Let's go check it out. Like, it's like, how can you do that? I'm like, man, I've been doing this since I was 6, 7. You're like, oh, you never had to do this. You've always had an answer to your problem. You always got it fixed. Everything got fixed for you. And that person will look at you in some sense of the way, have truth. They'll look at you with some kind of like, I would say, uh, some kind of envy, I would say, but also some type of gratitude, because they're like, you lived life, you actually lived. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah. And some people, they can see that. They're like, wow, like I'm smarter than you. I have more than you, but you lived life. And I'm like, yeah. And in that, again, like I said, that person who didn't experience that, they'll realize that they're like, I didn't really get to live life yet, did I? I'm like, no. And I'm hoping that it doesn't come, I hope it comes sooner than later, because I'll be honest, until you get to experience the things that happen in life, you won't understand the true meanings of, life. And that's what you're basically like, hitting right on the nail when it comes to that. Because I run into people all the time who are just like, even on my social media, like, I can't believe this happened to you. I'm like, where have you been living? Like, this happens to people. I'm like, well, I know this happens to people. I just didn't know, it was happening as much as it was to people. But I'm like, I know good things and bad things happen. But you run into people who just think their life is always good, and they're
Yeah.
25 years old. And they're like, I've never had a bad moment. I'm like, wow. Okay, well, I don't want wish upon you, but you need to have one or two, because you need to understand that you're not going to be here forever. And you'll realize people like that. They're like, what? I'm not going to be here forever? I'm like, no, your end day's coming, buddy. Like, and like, they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, and that type of thing can be scary to an adult, I think, in their older days. That's why I said I hope it happens sooner than later, so you can get an understanding that that's part of life. It's like rain and sunshine, just enjoy them both. The rain's just as good as the sun. Like, you just enjoy them both. And some people don't see that. They're like, I hate the rain. I'm never gonna go outside. I'm like, well, it may be a day, it might rain every day. What you gonna do? You're gonna not be happy? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, you don't get the true meanings of life, then you need to figure this out. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you so much on that. And there's there's the part where you don't want to wish upon people, like you don't want them to have to learn the hard way, because
Yeah.
and that's where, I mean, we now, with the internet and social media and things like this, and being able to reach more people with our stories, we have the ability to maybe convince people to take a look at their lives without them having to experience a traumatic event,
Yep.
without them having to have like exponential loss in their life. That maybe we, even if we can convince five people to take a look at your life and figure out how to enjoy the little things, that's five more people. And if all of those five people, convince five more people, we change the world. And
Oh
that,
yeah.
I mean, it, it just gives me hope for the future. Um,
Yeah. You know, I
I
I I made it so I can educate people. I'm getting back just the same way I'm receiving it. So, there are people out there who are literally doctors, professors, they're in the smartest, engineers, they're rocket scientists, and they need to be educated on just, things that they don't know that will make them better people. You know what I mean? And that it literally might be coming from someone who can't read, who grew up, in low income households, who was abused in elementary school, and they'll be like, "Hold on, I have to look at my life and reshape my life and understand life now." I'm like, "Yeah, now you were educated the same way I had to be educated on, like, I'm not where I come from. I'm not, the projects I grew up in. I'm not what people have told me. I'm not stupid. I'm not. No, you are. You go educate yourself. Get a book." It's like, oh, so yes, there's education in all different platforms. Like everywhere, there's a way to educate yourself, and that's what I'm seeming to look forward to doing in my life now. Educate people on, how important it is to, to be educated, basically. So like that's what I'm facing in my way. So yeah,
Yeah. And there's um I think one thing that gets overlooked a lot in our society is the education that's outside of school and outside of books. Like, I gotta tell you, I was book smart. I was a straight A student. I have an engineering degree, and all of that stuff eventually led me to pursue other things because I realized in all of that, like, I could work myself to death every day for the rest of my life, and that could just be my life, and I could just be stressed all the time, or I could step away from that and find
yeah,
something else.
yeah.
And that is education that I got from conversations with people. From and one of my favorite things, I mean, conversations are obviously one of my favorite things. Um, but everybody has wisdom. Like, you don't have to be 60 years old to have wisdom. Um, some of the some of the things I've learned that have affected my life the most in the last like 5 to 10 years have come from people who are a decade or more younger than me.
Hmm.
And like they're in high school and they're educating me because they have a different perspective on the world, one that I haven't seen before. And they share that with me. And then I get to expand my mind and the way I see the world. And that's why I think conversations are so powerful.
Oh yeah.
We all have a different perspective. Um, I wanted to, so quick story. Um, it always makes, well, I get enraged sometimes, right? When people who have had an easy life, who don't understand that there are people who struggle, like they haven't seen that and they are just oblivious to it. So when COVID hit and schools shut down, um, I had one friend post on Facebook who was like, "Oh, I'm so glad that my kid has an iPad from his school and he can get straight to learning and he can talk with his teacher every day and he can do all this. It's so great that we all have this." And I was like, "We don't all have this. My kid goes to a school that does not have one-to-one technology, and he finished his kindergarten year with a packet of papers, and that was kindergarten. It was like, okay, finish these worksheets on your own, have fun.
Wow.
um and it's something that drives me crazy because there are people who assume that because they have something, everybody else has that same thing. And like at that time I like went on a rage on Facebook with my friends. I was like, I like, it's great that your child has access to this, but half of the children in our district don't. Half of the children in our district don't have food at home or enough food at home, and they like get food at school, and that's how they get fed. And like it makes it was just, there are so many people who are like, this is not that big of a deal. I'm like, no, it's not that big of a deal to you because you're gonna be okay. And there are
Mm.
other people, there are other kids who are going to fall a year behind in literacy because they don't
Yes.
have someone who can help them, because they don't have books at home, because they don't have a parent at home who can be with them because they have to be out in the workforce in order to keep kids alive. Like there's all of these things that it's it's great to think that everything is peachy keen all the time, but having compassion and empathy for people who don't have as much as you have, I think is the first step to being able to change that. And that's something that it makes me mad when people don't see it.
Yeah, that is that's I mean you're on target with what you're seeing and trying to explain to other people, but unfortunately other people won't be able to see that because again it's something they haven't experienced. It's a wild uh it's a wild way to look at life when you don't understand, like I said, the full versions of life. There's I look at myself as a very educated person in the way that I'm educated, but I understand that I don't know as much as I think I know, and that education allows me to understand that I'm like, not only me, your smartest person in the world is not the smartest person in the world. They're just the smartest person that they know, and that's just pretty much about it. Like they know that they're very smart, but I'm trying to explain something to you. Like there's an ant in this world that's more intelligent than that person, and that person doesn't believe it. Because that ant knows how to maneuver around the world completely different than you do. You just see it as an ant, and that's just how I look at life. And I view these things, and I see these things, and I hear these things like what you're saying, and it 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 blows my mind because I'm like, these are full adults with so many uh uh just I would say stuck in their ways. Like they're not able to see outside of their own perspective. And
Mhm.
to me that's a really scary thing because you're your child's biggest influence, and your child's going to mimic you in many of those characteristics. And you think that you're giving your child the best of the best of the best by having these best of the best things going on or what's going on in life, and you don't realize that your child's going to miss that one thing that you were just lacking, that you were lacking, and you're going to give it to your child. And you think that because your kid has everything or your life is all great, that life is going to be great. And you don't realize that the kid who's growing up on the other side of the town or on the other side, you just don't understand that their lives are connected. You
Mhm.
just, time in life, your kid will meet this kid. They will become connected in time, in some time zone. And your child that you raised without, a care of a kid across the tracks or with other ways in other countries or in their lives, they're going to be affected in their time zone. Right now, this is your time zone. How's it? How do you feel about COVID? How do you feel about things going on? Don't feel too good. That wasn't your parents' time zone. That was yours. This is yours now. Your children, they don't have no idea of it. They're just living life. They understand things are happening, but they're just living. They're going to get to a certain time in life, and theirs is going to be different. Not going to be. It's going to be something just probably worse. And then they're not going to have the empathy, the sympathy. They're not going to have the home training. They're not going to have the certain things that they just needed to be able to connect with the person across the tracks. Because that person across the tracks, when COVID happened, people across the tracks had more strengths than the people who were on the right side of the tracks because
Mhm.
they've always had. Why do you think their lives didn't change? They're like, what you talking about? Most of those people in the projects and stuff, they went up. They went up in life because the platform leveled out. I was one of them. The platform leveled out. People who were on the top and they were all scared and things were happening. I'm like, we were scared too, but we're like, you don't get it. We've been living in fear 30 years. Like I'm scared every day. Lights and bills are going to be cut off since I was a child. You telling me that lights and bills are going to be cut off at 30 something? Not for this guy. I'm like, I know what to do. Like I've been doing this for, oh, you need my help now. You need my help now? You're like, oh, okay, let me show you how you do this. You mean people needed help to go to welfare offices and all this type of stuff? There was a bunch of people and they didn't understand that. I'm like, you, you spent your entire life thinking that the world is going to be the way that you see it. And that's just not how it goes. The world's going to do what the world's going to do. And you need to be able to educate your kids and hopefully educate yourself, go outside of your comfort zone. So when your children grow up, they understand the world. They understand that at any given moment, their perfect world can be changed, and they need to be
Mhm.
able to maneuver parts of the world. This is a small, big world, but they need to understand that they need to have respect and sympathy and empathy and an open mind to other things that are happening in the world. Don't be stuck in this one way. A lot of the children who have that are it's because of their parents. Their parents showed them that. They didn't tell them that. They probably told them something different, but they showed them it. They showed them that level of privilege, that level of, like, uh, uh, turn the other cheek. They showed them that. They didn't verbally, that doesn't do anything. It's what you do on a day-to-day basis. That's one of the big reasons why I wanted to learn how to read. I could tell my kids to go to school. I could tell my kids to learn. I could tell my kids to pay attention. I could tell my kids, but if my kid doesn't walk through that front door and see me sitting on the couch, or working out every time he turns his head, or trying to better myself, or treating someone with kindness, or if he doesn't see that, he ain't gonna care what I told him. He won't care nothing about it. He's not gonna care. He needs to see me exercise those strengths, so he knows, hey, Dad, what you're doing is uncomfortable. I don't like being nice to people who are mean to me. I'm like, then you might have a bad life growing up, son, because people are gonna be mean to you unwillingly, and you need to know how to walk away and have a better, and have happiness when you get away. But Dad, you don't do it. When they get mean to you, you get bad mean back. I'm like, oh crap, I told you to do. Yeah, but why don't you do it? I'm like, you're right. I oh Okay, now I get it. It's time for me to start exercising that. So now my kid knows, like, I know what it looks like to feel uncomfortable. I know what it looks like to be strong, because my dad did it. My dad struggled. My dad put himself in uncomfortable situations. So now my son looks at uncomfortable situations like normal situations. He doesn't feel uncomfortable when he gets into these positions. He's feeling like, okay, I'm embarrassed. All right, sounds good. Thank you for embarrassing me, everybody. It's like, hold on, you're not gonna be angry, or try to get back at someone, or try to ruin your life. You're like, no, my dad was embarrassed. He's been embarrassed his whole life. We've been taught how to be embarrassed. You're like, how did you get taught how to be embarrassed? You'd be like, he would get embarrassed, and then he would smile, and then go be happy. And then people were like, oh, so you seen it. You'd be like, yes, for 30 years, 40 years, I've seen him do that, not heard him do that.
So I'm going to take that and then bounce off of that as well, because as humans, we are flawed. And as parents, especially, we are flawed because we're still unlearning the things that we learned in our childhood, that we're still, I mean, not everybody is on a healing journey. But those, and that's a whole different story. But those of us who are, like, being able to understand where we falter, and I have similar conversations with my kids, and there's times that they call me out and they're like, "But mom, you didn't do this," and I'm like, "You're right. Let's talk about that," because then I talk about, like, the fact that I am flawed and I still make mistakes. And I cannot tell you how many times I've apologized to my children because I'm like, I'm sorry that I lost my temper with you, because it was not, like, you were not the cause of it. You were not, like, just because I was not handling my emotions and I was not being able to do what I needed to do. So being able to apologize and being able to take, I not maybe not take credit, but um the word I'm looking for, take accountability for when you mess up, when you make a mistake, because we do. As adults, like, we are not perfect. As parents, we are certainly not perfect. And being able, and that again is showing your kids, like, yes, I screwed up, but
Mhm.
I'm also going to take accountability and say I screwed up, because you're going to screw up. You're you're
Yep.
going like you're going to make a mistake. You're going to hurt somebody when you didn't intend to. Like, one of the things teaching my kids, just, I mean, I have two boys, right? They wrestle, they hurt each other, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. And just the idea that teaching them, like, if you hurt somebody, you apologize. And they're like, but I didn't mean to. I'm like, I don't care. Like, you hurt them and you're sorry. Like, you, you, if you're intentionally hurting them, you're probably less sorry than if you accidentally hurt them. So, um, those sorts of things. And I think that, I mean, embodying that as a parent and understanding, just like you said, like, you have to show them how you want to be, because if you live your life as a do as I say, not as I do, you're going, like, you're going to reap some rewards you weren't expecting. And um, they're probably not going to be super positive, right? Um,
Yeah.
so if we can, And I think that a lot of that goes back to the empathy and compassion. And one of the things for me was being able to be vulnerable. So like I'm not a crier, right? Um, and for the first like few years of my kids' lives, I would not let them see me cry because I was like, they can't know I'm hurting. They can't know that something's wrong because I have to protect them. But then I had this thought.
Mm.
I was like, I want them to be able to express their emotions. I want them to be able to recognize if they are angry or if they're frustrated or if they're sad or all of those different things. And if I can't show them that I can do it, then I can't expect them to be able to do it either. So then I
Yes.
eventually got to the point where like I would cry in front of my kids and they'd ask what's wrong and they don't want me to be sad because kids like they don't want to be they don't want their parents to be sad. They like take on that responsibility sometimes. And then having those conversations like, yeah, I'm sad because I'm allowed to be sad because emotions are just their feelings are just information about the world and sometimes you have to process those things. And sometimes it looks like tears, sometimes it looks like um talking too loud and moving too fast because you're stressed out, things like that. But having those conversations around it and allowing it to happen, I think has been one of the best things I've ever done for my kids. Because I didn't do it for me. I'm still uncomfortable crying in front of myself, but I will
Oh,
cry
it's
in
all
front of
gonna
my
be.
yeah. Because so many of us weren't allowed to feel emotions. Um,
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean,
yeah,
uncomfortable, and it's a natural part of life. But for some reason, I restrict that part of me for for no reason. That's the truth. There's no reason why you're doing it. That's literally like the rain coming down and trying to stop itself. Like it's just like imagine the rain like just having an attitude. It's like can you imagine that? It's like hold on, I'm gonna truth. If the rain had an attitude, it probably would be thunder and lightning or something. It's like I'm trying to stop you. It's like don't know. Like I got to plant. I got to water this earth. I got to water these plants. Things need to grow. I got to drain out some of the toxins in the world. I got to get down there. And it's just like, can you imagine? Like, that's the same thing from your human body. It's like, your body wants to let this out. You don't even know why it's coming out. Let it out. Like, it's a part of you. Like, you need to process that through because you don't even know if it's something that is building up inside of you, cancerous or something. You're like, hey, this is how cancer gets released. We don't know. In your mind, you're sitting here thinking, like, how do you know that this is how sicknesses get out your body? Like, let it out. But some people will literally, you look at some of the people in the world who have never cried, and you can see in their face, you can see in their emotion, the way they behave, you can see it's like a zombie. A lot of times you see those emotionless, and you're like, wow, like man, like now I can see what it would be like if I didn't. Because even myself, when I decided to self heal myself and go into drinking and certain things that I would do, I was suppressing my emotions, and that hurt. I mean, you can see it in my face, you can see it in my skin, you can see it in my pictures. You're like, wow, you were puffier, or your body looked like it was like you looked older or something. Or I'm like, yeah, I think I was suppressing some things that should have came out. Like, and that's what it was. When I got sad, I easily was like, okay, I'm feeling the sad. Let's hit this local bar and get this feeling out the way. And it did. It went away, but I never got to release the emotion, never got to let out and process what I needed to process. And truth, uh, I will say, to double back on, what we talk about, what we're talking about, reading. Reading allowed me to learn how to process. I think it literally taught me how to process. Like I started reading, and I'm like, hold on, there's people in these books talking about that I should start, expressing my emotions and focusing on, dealing with this problem and overcoming the thing. I'm like, don't go drink it away. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, it's like I've been dealing with this for 33, 34 years. And I'm just now reading a book that's telling me that I need to process my emotions. I'm like, how do you process your emotions? Like in the beginning, you're like, how do you even do that? It's like, I can't make myself cry. And like, I don't even know how to cry. Like, it's like, you know what I mean? You're like in the beginning of, what do I do? Where do I go with this? And then you read a couple more pages, and the pages will tell you, like, don't do nothing. Just let it go. And you're like, what? You know what? Hold on. I need to know more. You read more, and the books, it just keeps educating you. And at any given moment, by the time you come sometimes finish a book, you don't find out you're crying, processing your emotions. You're like, why am I crying right now? You're like, because you're now figuring out that your whole life you've suppressed parts of you that didn't need to be suppressed. And
Mhm.
now the book that you've suppressed it, and now you feel feelings because you're feeling a little confused, a little, messed up, a little, things don't make sense. And your brain's like, I'm gonna let out a little tear. And you're like, why am I crying? Because I'm figuring out that I never wanted to cry. It's like, there you go. That's the process. And you're like, you don't even realize it. Like in the mix of a book, you're literally just finding yourself screaming at something. Like, what the freak is why? And I'm like, oh my gosh, a book brought that out of me. Like that's happened to me numerous amount of times, especially when I read the Diary of Anne Frank. Like I was processing emotions and reading her thing. I was just trying to read her book, but what it would do, it would allow me to just talk. And then when I talked about me. And when I talked about me, I started crying and screaming and cursing at myself. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with things and not even knowing. I think I'm just reading. You're like, no, dude, you're processing emotions. You're going through a whole storm right now. And reading, those are things I haven't even spoke to people about much, but that's the gift of reading. That was the part of the gift. That's one of the addictions I have. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go through a journey. Like I'm gonna go get this book and I'm gonna struggle through it and I'm gonna learn some things. I'm gonna feel like I don't want to read it. And by the time I finish this book, I'm gonna be a different person. Like we're gonna be a different person when I get through this book. And I do. I become a different person. It just happens. And I believe, educating yourself in that way, just reading books when you don't want to, or just doing anything that's educating you when you don't want to. If a person has weight problems and then they decided to just go run and they find themselves cursing at themselves and feeling pains in their ankles, their back, their heart's racing. And all of a sudden they start thinking they want to give up and they start crying and they start saying, I'm not doing this no more. What do you think's happening? It's not about losing the weight. It's about you going through that emotion. You're
Mhm.
learning. Oh my gosh, like I'm learning that my feet hurt means I'm learning like, yes, your feet is a sign of showing you the struggles of going through the emotions, going through pain, your back, your feet. That's all part of it. And people will give up on that and suppress it and say, no, I'm not going to go run no more. I'm not going to go work out. I'm like, no, no, no. You go feel that pain. My knees hurt. Go hurt those knees. That's your body telling you that you get one body. Your body's supposed to move the way it's supposed to move. Go feel that pain. And that's learning. That's like reading. People don't see it, but I'm like, that's learning. All that. In 5 years, you won't feel that pain no more. Your body will get adjusted, but people won't want to go through that. And that's how I feel with reading. Every book I read is a struggle. It hurts. But by the time I finish it, there's like these levels. I start off wanting to read all the energy in the world. I get through a couple pages. I'm like, oh, this sucks. I get halfway through and I'm like, wow, all right, I want to read another book. Then I get a little bit like 75%, and I'm like, okay, I'm not even reading as much anymore. Now I put the book down more than I'm reading it. Then I get up and finally say, you know what, let's do this. And I finish the book off, and I'm like, by the time I'm done, I'm like, wow, like there was good days, there was bad days, there were downs. There were sleepless days, there were stressful days. I'm like, why was I going through that? I was like, because through that time, you were doing something really hard. You could have lived life watching TV, just doing what you usually could do that are easy, and you would have had a month of a smooth month, pretty smooth. But the fact that you decided to get up and do that one little hard thing, even though it was read one page to me is like reading a book to someone, like a full novel. So to me, I'm like, man, getting through that one page that's why you had, a bad day, or that's why you had, a headache. That's why you had, a sleepless night that day. That's why you slept longer than your alarm that day. Like, because you were going through things, man. Like, you were learning. And then by the time I finished that book, it feels like I won a marathon or something. It's
Mhm.
literally, I'm like, and then I look over to the side at these books again and I go, I got 100 more marathons to go. You're like, yeah. And think of a person who doesn't like working out and they're told them, like, hey, you're going to run 100 marathons. They finish one. You can talk to a person. They'll say, oh my God, I'm so happy I finished that. But when they look back and say, hey, you got 99 more to go, they immediately feel that pain. They immediately go, oh my gosh, I don't want to. I'm like, but listen, that's life. That's learning. You gotta keep doing it. And that's what I've gained from reading. That's one of the lessons and the experiences I've been given with this reading journey.
Um, so question, do you prefer more fiction or nonfiction?
I'm still learning the fiction, nonfiction. This is fake and real. Read like books, right? That's fiction, nonfiction.
Yeah.
Is that
So not yeah,
true?
nonfiction are like nonfiction is gonna be like the educational self-help books, um, anything that's about something that actually happened. And fiction is going to be more along the lines of stories. So like Outsiders is fiction. Um, let's see, what book can I look at on my
Well,
um,
Anne Frank, fiction, right? That was nonfiction. That was real. It was a real story, right?
it's a real story, but so that's Anne Frank's diary. I mean, I think honestly it would probably be filed under both of them because it is her actual diary, but it is sold as a novel. That's an interesting one. Huh. I'll have to look at that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna Google it.
Well, I will say this: I like the ones that are true stories. I like, I think, because where I'm at in my life right now, because being an adult, um, I I kind of lived in a fantasy world for a long time because I had to imagine a lot more than the normal person because I had to,
Hmm.
but just to think of how I made things happen in my life, they weren't they had to become like where I'm at in my life now. In order for me to do what I do now, is because I've lived in a world where I can't take no for an answer. So even if a person's like, "Yo, you ain't never gonna become a motivational speaker," I told people I'm gonna become the best motivational speaker in the world, and then I don't care. I'm believing it, and it's like, well, there's no way you cannot make me not believe it. And if I see someone else who does it, then it's there's no other option. You know, that's how I view it. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You did cut out for a second, but you came back in. So,
Yeah. So, oh, yeah, I
um,
have. Oh, my okay. There you go. Someone called my phone. I didn't know I had it on do not
oh,
disturb. I don't know.
I don't know. Technology gets crazy sometimes. One of my favorites because I've been doing a lot more nonfiction lately, and I'm trying to get back into fiction. Um, so one of my favorite quotes that I read recently was this idea that both nonfiction and fiction are there to educate, but nonfiction educates through information and fiction educates through imagination. Um, because, and then other just fun facts. Did you know that doesn't your brain doesn't distinguish between real life and story? So when you get connected to characters and they feel like you're friends, like psychologically, your brain doesn't know that they're not real friends because it has the
Hmm.
same impact on you
Oh,
neurologically, which makes me feel less crazy about spending so much time in books when I was a kid when I didn't have friends because I was like, I have friends, they're just fictional characters. Or like
huh,
when characters get like when your favorite character dies off
huh,
and then you cry and you process those emotions because your brain and your body doesn't know the difference between you losing a real friend in your real life and losing a character in a book. Um,
hmm,
so it gives you that ability to process emotions at a whole different level. I think books are amazing. I'm
oh,
a giant
but you
nerd.
on it?
So
I'm in the
um,
same boat. Amazing. I mean, I'm just learning, so I'm just stepping into the world. But I think as I go on, I'm gonna find out a lot more about how amazing it is to to be able to start taking on this journey with reading. I'm still at the beginning. I tell people I'm nowhere near where I want to be. I'm literally at the beginning, starting line. I'm still at the starting line. I haven't even taken off yet.
well, I I look forward to seeing more of your journey. Um, and I wish you luck on that journey because the amount of things that you are going to learn and the amount of people that you are going to fictionally meet,
Hmm.
um, it's it's gonna blow your mind. So we're gonna say that one more time.
I said I'm looking forward to it. It gave me a new life, literally. Like it was something come into my life at the right time. And I can honestly say like it's one of those things that I know struggle. You know, I've accomplished a lot in my life, and I didn't even notice I was an accomplisher. Like I didn't know I could do things that I could do. Um, Seeing this reading journey, it's like thinking of like I look at it like Michael Jordan, LeBron James, like you know, like some of the people in this world who are at the top of their level in their game. And I look at this reading journey just like that. Like I'm like, okay, so at one point in time, LeBron had to just learn how to dribble. And he had to learn how to shoot the ball. He had to learn how to pass. He had to learn how to communicate. I'm like, what made him the best? You're like, he had a passion for it beyond people's imagination. And I'm like, I'm that person. I'm like, I have a passion for this. Like there's good days, bad days, but there's not a day that goes by that I don't like. I'm addicted. Like I tell people all the time, it's I know what I gain from it. It's like I know that when Jordan and LeBron was taking thousands of shots, it wasn't about they wanted to shoot the ball 1,000 times. They probably hated doing that. Their arms, their back, everything probably hurt. They understood that what would come from it. And that's what I'm like, I don't care how much this hurts. I will read every one of these darn books. I'm going to do it. I don't care. I'm going to read 100 books this year. And next year, if I read 100, I'm going to read 200. And then the next year, I'm going to read 300. I'm like, there's nothing else in my life that I want to spend my time on besides educating myself and becoming better at this craft because I didn't know I could do it. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't want to become a rocket scientist. I don't want to become an NBA basketball player. I could have probably became an NFL football player. I was very good in sports, super good. I was one of those kids that can dunk in fifth grade. I was crazy athlete, but I didn't care about it. I just like, I'll go play for fun. This, oh no, this is different. Like I don't care. Like if I'm somewhere and I don't have a book with me, there's anxiety in me a little bit. I'm like, oh, I need my book. Like people who carry their phones, I carry my book that way. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, I need to be able to pull this open and read. Like why? Because you don't get it. I'm on an excessive journey. I am obsessed with this. I need to do this, and I understand that connection. That's a gift to me. I got it at 33, and that's probably the reason why it was held out for so long. You know what I mean? In this category, you can get something like this at 33 and take it to 60s and become 70 years old. I might be a great philosopher, a great, book writer. And I could at 80, I could be writing me the best book in the world. And people be like, how did you? I'm like, because you don't get it. There's no time zone. I don't need a word. There's no age limit. I don't got to be 20 in my prime to learn to write a book. I can be in my 70s. You know what I mean? And that's what people don't get it. I'm like, I'm not worrying about today. I'm worrying about the 80-year-old me who's sitting there writing probably the best book in the world. And people are like, how did you? I'm like, because I understood that this was my thing. This was my calling. This is what I was supposed to do. And I'm obsessed with it. That's why I said I'm at the starting line because my journey might be in, 34 years from now, in 30, 40 years. And I might be like, hey, now you know me. And people be like, man, I remember when you were I was a kid. Now, I was just like the little kid. I was just like LeBron James or Michael Jordan when they were in elementary school shooting at the basket. Remember that kid? I'm him now. And I'm him at 60. That's what I'm trying to be now. That's what I look at it as.
I love that. And then you kind of already answered. I was going to ask you if you've contemplated taking your newfound love of reading and also write.
Oh,
But I
100%.
mean,
I'm
you
trying
said
to write books. I want to speak. I want to write books. I want to do it all. I want to do it as I want to take this as far as my mind can allow me to go. I don't know. Tell you the truth. I don't know. It's like you asking an elementary school kid, what team they want to play for when they grow up. They can tell you, or what position, or how tall you're going to be, how tall you
mm-hmm.
think. 7 foot. I mean, I don't. Yeah, like that's what it is like right now. When you're like, do you want to write? I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know what that looks like. I'm like, my brain can't process that. Like, I don't know how far can you go with reading? Like, if you're like Oliver, you can go to I'm like, okay, then that's where I'm going. I'm like, where's that? Further than that, whatever that is, I'm going further than that. You're like, you could become the best storybook writer or philosopher or storyteller, or start your own library or whatever it is in the world. I'm like, that's where I'm going. I'm going to do that. That whatever that is, that's what I'm going to do.
I love that. Before we jump into our game, is there anything that you want people to know, like one little tidbit of knowledge that you think people need to take away from today?
Yeah, 100%. And this is for all people. If you want to know the secrets to life, they're in the book. Everything hidden in life, everything that you're looking for, don't matter what. If right now you are going through whatever you're going through in the world, I don't know what it is. There is a book. There is someone in this world who has been through what you have been through, and not just one person. There's probably thousands. They're in your library, right in your hometown. You're riding around. You're looking for the answers. It don't matter if you lost a family member. You're going through a breakup. It don't matter what you lost your job. It don't. There is a book right there. You just go down there and just say, "Hey, I lost my job today. Is there a book here about losing jobs?" And I would 100% guarantee you, there's a book in there that will teach you how to overcome the feelings, the emotions, and get a different job. Don't you don't got to turn nowhere else. There is a book in your local library for free too. That's something that wasn't given to me. And I want everyone in the world to understand. If you're driving around right now trying to figure out how to change my life, what can I do? Whatever you're doing, I don't care what it is. You can stop right now and for free go to your local library and find a book. And right there and change your whole life.
Every librarian in the world right now is like silently clapping for you. They're like, yes, people need to know.
Yes.
Libraries are such a phenomenal resource. Okay, so we are going to play a game. Do you
Okay.
want right or left?
Left.
Okay, so your first question. What is one of the most embarrassing things you've ever done?
Oh, ever done? I
Yes.
don't know because I was like get embarrassed too easy. I was like always laughing and silly about the things, so I never really took it as embarrassed. Trying to think of something I've done that was embarrassing. You know what? The most embarrassing I've ever think I think I can't even think about anything that embarrassing because everything I've done, I've always kind of felt like it was silly. I was that kind of kid. Like I would say the most embarrassing thing I've ever done was go to prison.
Okay.
Yeah, I did that. That was embarrassing to me. I knew I wasn't a prisoner. I knew I wasn't somebody who wanted to go to jail and do that. But I was embarrassed because I wasn't educated enough to understand why I went to prison. I was embarrassed because of that. I didn't understand. I'm like, why am I going? Like, what did I do? And they're like, what did you mean? What did you do? I'm like, it's embarrassing to me because I fully didn't get it. And I think that's probably one of the most um, honest answers I can give you. I was dumb and clueless to life, and I embarrassed myself when I did that because I could have avoided that situation if I just educated myself a little more.
All right. My first question. Name two people that impress you and why. Um, I I'm gonna make this an easy one. Both of my sons impress me because they they're both extremely empathetic. They are very self-aware, and um, they own up, not all the time because they're 7 and 9, but they own up a lot to what they do, and who they are. And that is just something that at their age, I think is very, very impressive. So, yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, you would say the same thing. I was going to say the same exact thing, but my lady, she's my number one. Regardless of where I'm at in this world or what we would go through, she has impressed me. Because again, life is what it is, and I have to give. You have to do it. She has impressed me beyond. Uh, if there's a woman out there in this world uh, who even thinks like they would be able to impress me, I wouldn't even. And again, to me, I would be like, you don't have no idea. That's my number one. I'm her number one supporter when it comes to like, she can't. in some way do any wrong. Like even though she may, I'm like I can't. It's hard because you don't get it. I can't even see her as a person with flaws, and that's a problem sometimes because she's human, and she even says, "I'm human." Like stop on this pedestal, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry," because I will because of you know she's close to perfect, man. Like, and it's just because like when I needed somebody to listen to me and just hear me, she heard, man. Like she heard things that I didn't even say. So it was impressive to me. Like I didn't even say the words. She just seen my behavior and knew what I needed, like mentally, emotionally, like physically, spiritually. She knew, like, you just need this. And I'm like, you know what I mean? Like I did the work, but she opened up that door for me to see, like, dude, this is all you need. I hear you. I see you. And my other person would be my son. My son, my 10-year-old. Um, his father passed away when he was younger, and I came into his life to step into that role. And as a 10-year-old, you know, I don't know completely how to be a father at that time or even now to a 10-year-old. And he's allowed me to, exercise that 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 gift of, being able to become a father. It's a gift,
Mhm.
even though it may seem struggle or things are in the way or kids do what they do. You don't get it. Like that kid's going to turn into an adult one day and is going to be able to talk to you like an adult and give you back feedback for how you know were in their life. That's a gift.
Mhm.
And in life, you're going to be able to sit back as an old person, and that young man is going to be able to grow up and say, "Hey, man, I want to shake your hand." Like why? Because when I was clueless to life, when I didn't understand nothing in life, I can call you a person that a father figure or someone that kept me alive and kept me going through this world the way that I would have done it if I was conscious enough to be able to do it. I was 10, I couldn't do it, but now that I'm an adult, I can sit here and say what you taught me. I'm gonna go teach my kid. That's the gift that I get to get from him, hopefully. But I know that's a lot of work, and he gives me that opportunity. He challenges me. He makes he does. He's respectful. He does all the things that a child, if he was my own child from my own, that you would want. He doesn't put it in a position of being like, you're not my dad. He puts it in a position like, you want this opportunity, you got to work for it. You want to be you want me to be your son. You want me to grow up to be a good man. You got to work for this, Oliver. And he puts me in that position, and he does it with, the best way a child can ever do. I love him for that.
Yeah. Um, Kids are just amazing. Okay. What would you change to gain 1 hour per week, and what would be a better use of that time
What would I change to gain, and like in the world or for myself?
for yourself?
You know what? If I could keep it simple, I would change my thoughts. I would change my thoughts. I suffer from mental issue, like health issues. I have OCD, PTSD, anxiety, stress, from the things that have happened to me. And I would change the way I think. I would give myself more love, gratitude, more appreciation. I would give myself that hour to literally just have freedom from thoughts and uh, do more for me and everybody else around me, like with free of any thoughts. Like don't if someone hurts you in that hour, you're free of the thoughts. If you whatever happened, if something happened in that, you're free of those thoughts. You're allowed to be free to pursue what you need to pursue. So regardless of what happened in that hour, you're free from thoughts and you're allowed to pursue what you set out to do with with the same feelings. If you woke up this morning happy and something happened, you can stay happy for that hour and you can pursue what you're supposed to pursue. I would give myself that opportunity.
I like that. I like that a lot. Okay. Oh man. Um, so my question, if you were made dictator of a mid-sized country, what crazy dictator stuff would you do? Um, there's so many serious things I would do. Um, Seriously, I would have like mandated strength training classes starting like PE would be much more than just like, here's a basketball, run around for a little bit. It would actually be teaching kids how their body works and how to best utilize their body. Um, Mental health treatments would be 100% not like they would be like, I can't say they'd be required. I mean, I'm a dictator. I could say they could be required, but like they would be part of just your existence in my country. Like, you need a mental health checkup? Fantastic. Set one up. It's on me. Um, I would have people talking about their emotions and
Mm,
like, and understanding how your brain works and why you're doing the things that you're doing, so that people would grow up having a better sense of how much power they actually have over their lives and themselves, and not having to have so many people unlearn that
mm,
kind of stuff. um, and have it more built into how we raise the future. That's that's the
mm.
dictatory stuff. And then um, I would make somebody make delicious dairy-free ice cream so that I could eat it whenever I want to and not have to worry about an allergic reaction. Because I
They
love
have
ice cream
dairy
and
free.
I know, but it's really expensive and it's not as good. It's one of those things like it's good if you've never had real ice cream, but if you've ever had real ice cream, you know it does not taste like ice cream. So
I'm or anything. I don't eat nothing on them. So I mean, I know exactly what you mean. Like I gave up everything that I used to eat. So I don't eat nothing that I used to eat when I was growing up.
yeah, all that, yeah, we didn't even touch on that. Um, okay, your last question. Do you like to be emotionally saved or do you prefer to do the saving?
Oh, you know what? I prefer to probably do the saving because I can see my. I'm looking how I am now. Like I do a lot of work on myself, but I enjoy putting myself out there and helping people overcome their emotions and and their challenges in life by seeing my struggles and stuff. So that I can easily probably say I probably like helping other people. When I put myself out there, it's not to help me completely. It's mostly to help other people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I understand if I help other people, it'll help me. It does. When I get the feedback and someone tells me, "Hey, you changed me," or "You helped me," that helps. That's what helps me. Now, do I get the information like they got because I gave it out? No, I have to go search for that. But I try to make it more easy for other people to relieve their pains. When I just told people I can't read, that didn't feel good. But I understood that there's some people out there that it might make feel good. They
Yeah.
felt seen. They felt heard. Hold on, man, this dude really gonna say that? And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna say that. Like, that's embarrassing. I'm like, all right, I can't read too. I'm like, well, how do you feel now? And they're like, I feel pretty good now that you said it. I'm like, well, cool. I'm happy you feel good. Like, now we're good. Now we're even.
It does, it makes a huge difference. Um, just understanding how interconnected we all are and how everybody there's somebody out there that has had, if not the exact same, a very similar struggle as you have or as anybody else has, and being able to talk openly about that is one of those things that helps bring us all together.
For sure.
So my last question, and you can feel free to answer this one too, but what do you love most about your personal values, and how you deal with people around you? And this one's very simple for me. I try to go into everything with love. Love for strangers, love for obviously people who I have a deeper connection with, even love for people who I dislike. Um, I try to go into all interactions with people with that just energy of love, um, because that's who I am, and I'm not going to let somebody take that away from me.
I love that. That's hey, I'm very similar to that. So I applaud you for that. That's good. I love that.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of the Common Humanity podcast. Thank you all for being here today, and we will talk to you next time.
So, as we step into this new generation of moving things into a visualness, whatever, I want to remind everybody that there are always on Spotify, there's always a question to go along with each one of our episodes. So, if you want, you can respond in the comments, or you can go over to Spotify and give us um, a voice message so that you can be part of this conversation as well, based off of this conversation. What I want to know is, what is your favorite book ever? And you can make a list, whatever. But what is your favorite book, and why does it have meaning to you? Um, and other than that, remember to follow so that you don't miss any more of these real human conversations. Have a great day.